Late last year, we got word that Marvel Studios decided to scrap Daredevil Born Again, or at least the stuff that they already shot, after Kevin Feige reviewed it and didn't like what he was seeing. So they brought in new writers and new directors to essentially start over again, which is pretty unusual for Marvel, because in the past with a lot of their series, they pretty much just shoot what they can, and then if they have to, they go back and do a bunch of reshoots and other things and basically try to make what they have already work. But they took a different approach when it came to Daredevil Born Again, in that they wanted to make sure just from the get-go that it was going to be something that they think is going to be good. And right now it's looking like they have a lot of confidence in it too, because we're getting word now, according to Kevin Feige, that they plan on actually renewing Daredevil Born Again for a second season, and they're actually going to even start shooting the second season before the first season even premieres. So really, that does show a lot of confidence, but it could also be a signifier in that they are committed to basically doing a different approach to how they're producing their shows, something that's more akin to the traditional TV models. But let's look at this article from That Park Place that's talking about what they're doing with this. Before even airing the first season of its new show, Marvel boss Kevin Feige confirmed that not only is Daredevil Born Again Season 2 happening, it's filming in just a few months. While Marvel still gets the odd hit here and there, like this year's smash hit Deadpool and Wolverine, MCU movies are no longer a guaranteed license to print money, but one project in the works at Marvel that seems to have captured the attention of a fan base starved for quality in the upcoming Disney Plus series, Daredevil Born Again. And we did get a brief glimpse of what to expect for Daredevil Born Again. We don't have a trailer or anything like that. We only have basically just this brief teaser about it here. I'll just play it because it's pretty short right now.
It's been some time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's only about a 20-second
one.
one.
In the world.
I could say the same about you.
I wonder if your darker half would agree. Exactly what kind of a lawyer are you?
A really good one.
We have a long road ahead of us. Much to do.
All right, so that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot there that we've seen so far, but from what I've seen, it doesn't look bad, or at least there's nothing in there that stands out to me as like, oh, this is going to be terrible. I think it looks fine for what we've seen so far. The biggest hang up I have for this is still following the Daredevil from She-Hulk, or the Kingpin from what we saw in Hawkeye or in Echo, which I didn't think did the character justice. So since this is still kind of has those things hanging on to it, it's kind of a little iffy. But if they go back to the way the Netflix series were, then I think they could have the potential for something really big. And in fact, a lot of the writers and directors that they brought back to this after they fired the first group that they had are people who worked on those Netflix series. So it does stand the reason that it will have more of that tone and vibe to it. That's of course if the studio themselves doesn't stifle that creativity, because one of the things with the Netflix ones is they're operating independently of Marvel Studios as a whole, so they could do something that the studio wouldn't necessarily do. But Marvel has shown with their Disney Plus shows that they are willing to go a little bit more mature. At least that's kind of the idea that they tried to go with Echo. So I think they are willing to actually take that leap when it comes to this one. Originally slated for 18 episodes, Born Again was intended to be a soft reboot for Daredevil, inserting him into the MCU after decanonizing the popular Marvel show Daredevil, which aired 3 seasons on Netflix. It will see Charlie Cox return as blind attorney and crime fighter Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. It will also have Vincent D'Onofrio returning as Murdock's arch nemesis Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin of Crime. The show reportedly went through multiple rewrites, so we already talked about that right now. So a lot of this information is coming from an interview that Kevin Feige did, and this is what he says. Kevin Feige ensures that more Marvel television, Marvel animated series will be renewed. That starts with Daredevil Born Again. We're really excited to premiere the first season next year, when we'll be filming the second season. Where is it? Oh, here. Should have had this already opened up. Okay. Should be filming the second season. We like the idea of developing a series for multiple seasons. After all, that's one of the coolest things about television. And one of the things that Daredevil Born Again, what separates that from what we've seen with other Marvel shows in the past, because like I said, they pretty much just shoot from the hip at it, where they would just film whatever they can, and then they would go back and edit it and try to figure out how they can make it work in the edit, and then they'll go from there to see if it actually works. they're doing something different when it comes to Daredevil Born Again and a lot of their shows moving forward, where they said they're going to go back to the traditional TV model where they actually get a pitch for the show. They have kind of like a layout of the plan that they're going to be doing for the series and what their goals are for it. They're not just kind of going into it blind and just figuring out how to make it work later on. They're basically making a pilot for the show, presenting the pilot to the executives. If they give it a thumbs up, then they continue on making more of the show, and then they can maybe, if they have confidence in it, then they'll actually have it greenlit for several seasons if they can. And then if a show really does fail, well, then it just goes to show that the executives were out of touch, as opposed to what we've been seeing them do, where they've been trying to produce some stuff and then hoping that it would actually work. So I think this is more of a smart strategy for them. And Daredevil is kind of the canary in the coal mine. And I think if you're going to try to do this new TV model for them, Daredevil is a good choice of a first show to actually try it out with, because there is kind of a track record for it with the Netflix ones, even though that's separate from the rest of the MCU, or it's like they even said it's decanonized. It still has a framework for them to go off of. So if you're going to try to do it with Daredevil then and make it succeed, then maybe you can actually do it with some other shows too. We're really excited to premiere the first season next year, when we'll be filming the second season. Feige said, "We like the idea of developing series for multiple seasons. After all, that's one of the coolest things about television." Okay, so I just read that. Since producing original television content for Disney Plus streaming service, Marvel hasn't double dipped much for multiple seasons. The only notable show in Marvel's TV lineup to receive a second season on Disney Plus are Loki, which ended after 2 seasons, and What If, which will end this December after its 3rd season. And What If is also one of those things that it doesn't really matter because of having multiple seasons of that, because they don't really necessarily go off of each other. It doesn't have an overarching story, so you can continue that as long as people are still watching it. Loki, I don't think there was necessarily a plan for having a second season with that when they premiered it. I think basically it was well received, so they decided to continue for a second season, and now they're done with it. Daredevil is a different animal entirely, because we don't know how the first season, or technically the 4th season that they're doing for this, is going to be received. But if it is kind of along the lines of what we saw with the Netflix shows, then I think it will be pretty well received, and it could justify having a second season. And I do like the idea, if they are going to actually film a second season for it, then they do it right away, so that you don't have to wait several years between series. You can just have the first season come out in 2025, then the second season come out in 2026. Kind of how the traditional TV model used to be, where you would have seasons one year after the other, as opposed to what we're seeing with a lot of shows recently, where it takes several years between different seasons of shows. Both Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk have already been integrated into the MCU prior to Daredevil Born Again. Fisk served as the primary antagonist to both Hawkeye and Echo shows, while Murdock Daredevil showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home, She-Hulk, and a brief cameo appearance in Echo. So that's pretty much all it has about this. And like I said, this definitely shows that they have a whole lot of confidence in the show. But my biggest hang up though is this is the same Marvel studio that basically did the Daredevil thing for She-Hulk, which a lot of people didn't like how he was portrayed in that. They didn't like how Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, was portrayed in Hawkeye and Echo. So that's still kind of looming over all this. But if they can almost treat Daredevil Born Again as kind of like a refresher, and they treat the character properly, and they show some respect for the source material, and basically actually let the creators who know what they're doing do their job on this, then I predict that this could actually be a good show, and probably be turning over a new leaf for MCU series moving forward. We don't necessarily know that's the case, but some interesting news that also came out that kind of I think goes along with this, because it was announced earlier this year, kind of pretty soon after Marvel fired a lot of those people that were working on Daredevil Born Again, that Marvel was firing a lot of their executives there. Then it came out this last summer that a lot of the executives and producers that they were firing were the activist types who were trying to push their own agendas and things like that. And that's the stuff that's been alienating a large part of the audience, and why the MCU has been going down in recent years. Or a large contributing factor to why the MCU has been going down in recent years, because you're not necessarily having the best people working on it. It's the best people who are checking the right boxes, who are trying to push the right message for the studio. And if they're trying to deviate from that and go back to just making entertaining content, well, then Daredevil might be the first thing coming out that we can actually see how that works out for them. We have other stuff that's supposed to be coming out too, like Captain America 4 that's set to come out in February, and there's been a lot of rewrites and reshoots of that. We don't know how that's going to be affected by a lot of those laughs, because a lot of that was already in motion, and even though they've essentially reshot that movie a couple times, it's still, I think, going to have a lot of hangups from the old guard that was over at Marvel Studios. Daredevil Born Again will probably be the first big thing that we see coming out of Marvel Studios, which is gonna mark the new era for Marvel, so to speak, if they are in fact getting rid of a lot of the people, or maybe this is just going to be a one-off and a lot of their other things are kind of back to how they used to be. We don't know at this point, but right now when it comes to Daredevil Born Again, I'm not necessarily dismissing it. I wouldn't even necessarily say I'm optimistic about it, but I am curious because Marvel seems to have faith that it's going to be something that fans of their content would actually want to watch. So I think there's something to be said with that, but at the same time, I don't think they would produce anything in the past that they were confident would be a failure, like the hundreds of millions of dollars they spent on the Marvels. So I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. That's not really saying a whole lot right now, but this is just what's been going on over at Marvel Studios. So let me know what you think this means in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And if you can, click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.